Kathleen Monk. She is a strategist with the strategy group, longtime NDP strategist, former director of communications for the NDP, and the lady that's going to help me figure everything out as we go along for 2 hours. Let's just remind people a little bit some of the numbers, where we are at this point in the race. The campaign started officially on July 2nd, 2016, which seems like a million years ago. Although there weren't any candidates right away at that point. It took a number of months for people to get in. And the NDP has announced just recently, after the membership deadline closed, that the party now has 124,000 members eligible to vote in this race. That's triple the number of members that they had at the beginning of this race. And the voting officially starts online tomorrow. So that's sort of where we're at right now. I think I'm just going to bounce outside if I can, control room, and our own Katie Simpson is here covering this as well, and she'll just give us a sense of some of the people that are in the room, what they're here to do, what they hope to hear. Here's Katie.
Hey, Rosie, this certainly has the feel of a leadership campaign. You have lots of supporters here. Of course, you've got the swag tables. We've got the signs over here. This is Charlie Angus's table. We got the signs, we got the buttons, we got the pens. So it's a lot of people picking up their swag. There's a lot of energy in the room. Also, there are some undecided voters, and that's where we're going to bring in Sarah Jordanson. You're from Toronto.
Hi.
Why are you still undecided at this point?
All of the candidates have qualities I really like. I think there's quite a bit about the candidates that the job that requires people to grow into the job, and I'm still looking for what it is that will take them from being a candidate in this leadership race to take them to running a winning campaign and actually governing.
What are you looking for specifically this afternoon in the showcase? What is going to wow you?
I mean, I really like Guy Caron, but I want to see some more dynamism from him. Like, does he have something that can really pull you in and connect one-on-one with voters? I really like Jagmeet Singh. He's got a lot of charisma and energy. I want to see a little more depth in his policy than he has. I think those are my top two. I mean, I think Nikki Ashton is great and passionate, but I think she's a little more oppositional and would be, good as in opposition, but might not be ready to move from critiquing to governing. And I sort of feel the same way about Charlie.
Okay, well, thank you very much for speaking with us today. So, of course, with this leadership showcase, this will be the last opportunity that these four candidates will have to try and impress these voters, undecided voters, just like Sarah. Rosie.
Okay, thanks for that, Katie. So that's what we plan to hear over the next 2 hours. Each of the four candidates, Kathleen, has about 22 minutes to give their pitch. And they're pitching, I mean, we're showing this to Canadians, but are they pitching to the party members or they're pitching to the country at large right now?
They are primarily at this point still pitching to the party members. They are still in persuasion and what we call in electoral terms GOTV, which is get out the vote, right? So they are encouraging those last undecided voters, like the voter we just saw on the screen, to actually come to their team and vote. Voting starts tomorrow in terms of online. Mail-in ballots have actually already been sent into the party for calculation. And so this is their last pitch. So it's going to be a bit of a showcase. There's going to be some razzle-dazzle, some videos, and family members and supporters on board. And that's going to be really important. It's their last big pitch.
And I mean, we seem to think that there is a front runner. The media seem to have said that it is Jagmeet Singh, and the reason we're using that is not only the number of endorsements, but also the membership. He says he's brought in a significant number of new members.
Yeah, I think it's still hard to call in terms of first ballot results. I don't think there'll be a winner on October 1st when we first see those ballots come in. I think it's very unlikely we'll have a clear winner. It will be surprising if we do. That said, clearly the membership numbers are impressive. As you mentioned already, 124,000 members for the party. That really rivals our heady days of 2012 when we had 128,000 members. That was when Jack Layton had just passed and we had just elected Tom Mulcair. So we're talking membership numbers that have tripled in Manitoba, doubled in British Columbia, 5 times the amount of members in Ontario. So this is good news for the party across the board. But you have to translate those members into votes for the leader. And you're very right to point out the fact that they have to have 2 messages, the candidates today. One for the memberships to win the leadership, but then one for how they'll bring their message to Canadians at large. That election is 2 years away.
And not to burst the NDP's bubble with their big membership numbers, but to give you an idea about comparison, how they compare to the other parties. This year, the Conservatives, when they elected their new leader, they had more than 259,000 members, and the Liberals in 2013 had 294,000 supporters, because they, of course, have no membership fee anymore. 131,000 actually ended up voting in that leadership race. Since we're talking about voting, and this is going to be sort of a long, drawn-out process, we did a little bit of an explainer so that you could understand how the NDP is actually going to elect their new member. Here's how that's going to work. Party members will receive a ballot with all 4 candidates' names on it in alphabetical order. They will then rank them in order of preference and can vote either by mail or online. The polls for the first ballot open on Monday and won't close till October 1st. If one candidate receives 50% plus 1 of the vote, they'll have a winner. If not, the process repeats itself until someone crosses the 50% threshold. With each passing round, the last place candidate gets wiped from the ballot. In other words, we could find out the winner as early as October 1st after the first ballot, but we'll definitely know who will lead the party moving forward no later than October 15th. Okay, so now you have a sense of how this is going to unfold. A bit unusual. I'm not sure I've ever seen a political leadership be dragged out or the excitement build over 3 weeks, however you want to say it.
It is a really unique system. It is still one member, one vote. It is a ranked preferential ballot. But as you say, it can go. Some can go by mail, some can go online. And the key to the difference is that, it can change week to week, ballot result to ballot to result. So obviously the idea of this kind of voting tactic was developed when we thought we may have more candidates than 4. In the last leadership race, we had 9 candidates and went 7 rounds. We will not go 7 rounds at all in this election. But in some ways, the party, while it has had less attention, media attention to this race, it's been more subdued than the Conservative Party race that happened earlier in the year. But you could characterize that Conservative race as being largely toxic, off-brand, off-message, right? Where we haven't had the headlines of the New Democrats, but in the end, we have actually increased fundraising, we have increased membership. That's some good news.
You mentioned the last leadership race, so maybe we should just sort of cast our mind back to how we got here. I should point out that the current leader, Tom Mulcair, is not here today. He was briefly in Hamilton on Friday, had a personal funeral he needed to attend today, and is not back today, nor is there any sort of tribute to the current leader. And that is, I understand that there will be at some sort of policy convention coming up, but that is at least in part because this didn't end very well, I don't think, for Mr. Mulcair and his relationship with the party.
Yeah, just to remind viewers, it was in April of 2016, actually, in Edmonton, Alberta, where the leader got a non-confidence vote of 52%.
Which is pretty rare for the NDP.
It's incredibly rare, and it's really rare, frankly, across the board in terms of political parties. It's rare that someone gets a knife at them as he did in Edmonton. Although I still think it's unfortunate that he's not here. I understand he's got personal commitments, but I'm hopeful that the party can gel and move forward, and they will give some tribute to Mulcair in the new year at the party convention in February.
And and that review and that rejection of his leadership was really about the last election and the fact that there were more than 100 seats that the NDP had, and now it has ended up with 44.
Yeah, so it was actually 23 months ago that, if you really want to say when this really started, it would be the election of 2015 in October. And so 23 months ago, the New Democrats did not have a good result in that election, and we did drop by almost 60 seats and lost serious territory in places like Quebec and in Ontario, and particularly in the urban centres. And so the party membership did fault Mulcair largely for that, for his message, for how he delivered in the campaign, and they made the result very clear in April in Edmonton.
Okay, I just want to talk about a news issue that's sort of taken over a little bit, that's hanging over this event today, and that is some comments made by a Quebec MP, Pierre Nantel, about Jagmeet Singh, again the one of the Ontario candidates, who of course is sick and wears a turban, and Pierre Nantel made some comments about how that would be received in Quebec. He has tried to clarify those comments today, and I can show you what he attempted to clarify. But first, let me show you how Jagmeet Singh reacted to this. This is the Pierre Nantel statement. I'll show you that first. So this is what he issued today. He says, because of our history and the burden left by the Catholic Church, I'll keep going there, guys, if you want. That's no problem. I'll try and find it on my page here. Quebecers are sensitive to issues concerning church and state. He goes on to say, and watchful that they remain clearly separate. This debate is part of life in Quebec today. There is no point in accusing Quebecers, their government or its National Assembly. This is a real sensitivity of our political landscape that we all have to try to better understand. There is also a fierce debate happening right now in Quebec about discrimination, racism. The provincial government there announced some hearings that they want to hold to try and get a handle on things. That has not gone over well. So there is certainly a high level of sensitivity to this issue.
Yeah.
And I want you to weigh in. But first I want to play that clip of Jagmeet Singh, if I can, reacting to the fact that he does wear, you know, obvious religious symbols. And this is what he had to say about Pierre Nantel's statements.
I have a profound respect for the language and the culture and the identity. I've never said that I want people to accept the way I look. I want people in Quebec to accept that I have the values and the beliefs, the social democratic and progressive beliefs that will benefit the people of Quebec.
So this has sort of become, I think, a point of friction that the NDP caucus and the party have tried to settle today.
Yeah.
Pierre Nantel has not come out to talk to media other than release that statement. What do you think that tells us about, I don't know, that point of friction that seems, you know, maybe it's a Quebec-Canada thing, maybe it's Pierre Nantel, I don't know how you view it.
Well, it certainly was quite heated in Quebec caucus, which took place yesterday, where the Quebec MPs met, and I know that it was quite fiery and debated. Today, obviously, in the larger caucus, the Canada-wide caucus, they discussed the issue and did come out united against for whatever party, candidate gets elected. That said, I don't think it's helpful. It's not helpful for the party. It's not helpful for our growth in Quebec. It's not helpful for whatever candidate to be burdened with this going into this showcase day. I think that Jagmeet has handled it very well in terms of it's about policies. It's not about what I'm wearing and the product that I am as a candidate. But I think that even the candidate that was receiving Nantel support, Caron, tried to in some ways distance himself. Yeah. And I think that you'll notice today in the speeches, there will be a lot of cross-candidate reach-outs that will happen between candidates like Jagmeet and Caron.
Yeah. I didn't even tell everybody who all the candidates are. Let me just go over them quickly in case you haven't been following it closely. There's Jagmeet Singh, as we've been talking about, Caron from Quebec, Charlie Angus from Northern Ontario, and Nikki Ashton from Manitoba. Three of them are, of course, federal MPs. Jagmeet Singh is the only provincial MPP. He sits in Queen's Park. Unclear whether he would run immediately for a federal seat or not. It sure doesn't sound like it. But because you mentioned Caron and the way he's trying to position himself, his campaign, his team wants to be viewed as the unifier, the bridge between Quebec and Canada. Interestingly, Caron was one of those infamous paper candidates who got elected back in 2012 in the Orange Crush. But this is what he had to say about how this conversation that the NDP has to be very careful about has unfolded. Here's Caron.
It's clear, for example, in the case of building the bridges between Quebec and the country, that we cannot hope to form government in 2019 without being able to regain our strength in Quebec. But we need to ensure that we are prioritizing the regaining of the strength in Quebec, not because Quebec is more important, but because the path to government goes through the number of seats we have in Quebec, and by winning those seats, we can win more seats in the rest of the country.
So right now the NDP has 16 out of their 44 seats in Quebec. So Quebec certainly is, hadn't traditionally been a big voting base, but now is again. And there has to be an awareness, I think, you know, just from watching that Pierre Nantel stuff, it did remind me of the conversation we had around the niqab in the last election. And that, for many NDPers, they thought that was really what hurt them the most in that last election. Yeah.
And I think many New Democrats and those of us who worked around Jack really saw the Quebec breakthrough as one of the most significant things that happened in the 50-year history of the party up until that time. And so what people like Caron are bringing is that we have to keep our eye there and keep our eye on Quebec. Quebec is the only province in Canada, or territory for that matter, that we actually don't have a provincial party. It's affiliated directly to the national party, so it actually makes it more difficult to garner members and get more support in Quebec. But certainly in 2011 we did have that orange wave in Quebec where we elected tens of MPs from the region and all sorts of regions across Quebec. And I think people with people like Caron, there's a chance to do that again. You know, someone who is from Quebec, who is a francophone, who understands the culture.
Yeah. I was reading an article, a very good article in the Toronto Star over the weekend that quoted Olivia Chow and how she saw that there were sort of, Olivia Chow, of course, the former MP and widow of Jack Layton, and she saw that there were sort of 4 candidates but 3 streams of candidates. They are all pretty different and represent different parts of the party, which I think is also part of the conversation here, is it not? That sort of deciding what direction the party wants to take, which is not unlike what happened with the Conservatives.
Certainly you've got to decide what direction, but you also have to be careful that you're not running the past campaign, right? You can't look at 2015 and say, what candidate do we need to beat the 2015 Justin Trudeau or the 2015, well, that time it was Stephen Harper, but now it's Andrew Scheer, because the campaign in 2019 will look very different. We will have a Prime Minister in Justin Trudeau that will have 4 years of experience under his belt. And a record, exactly, of dealing with things like NAFTA, the threat from North Korea, who'll have serious chops, who won't rely, as he did in 2015, on his star candidates and the cabinet that surrounds him. So I think it's in choosing a candidate, New Democrats have to be careful of not just who they see, who they want as their leader, but who they think can best appeal to Canadians.
But there is Nikki Ashton, I think, would she be viewed as more to the left? Would you be comfortable with that qualification, given some of her policy positions?
And she would define herself as that. She's openly embraced Bernie Sanders, Jeremy Corbyn. She really, her and her campaign team have worked hard to develop what they call build the movement. And I think actually it'll be interesting to see whether, no matter where she lands on the ballot in October 1st, potentially on October 8th, if she actually endorses, because she's really done this grassroots work. So I'm not sure if she actually will endorse. She may try to say, no, the movement and the activists will decide. But she's done so much work on precarious work, on issues of race. Exactly.
We actually have a clip of Nikki Ashton talking about the issue about Jagmeet Singh. You know, not surprising, a lot of people are sort of going after him a little bit, as hardcore as the NDP is not incredibly critical and negative, but as much as you get about the idea that he wouldn't run for a federal seat before the next election. Here's what Nikki Ashton had to say about that.
I do believe being part of caucus and having a seat in the House of Commons does matter. Obviously we need a leader in the House right away to hit the ground running on key issues. What I will say, I raised it in the last debate in Vancouver, that I'd like to hear Mr. Singh's plan to get a seat in the House of Commons. I think that's very critical, but I also think it's very important that members hear from him and his campaign as well, more concretely about what that plan looks like.
So that's Nikki Ashton, one of the candidates that we'll hear from today, and her take on whether the next leader has to have a seat inside the House of Commons. Certainly it would help. I think certainly it would help. I think 2 years would be a long time to go without a leader in the House.
Yes, but also you can understand from a campaign perspective, why wouldn't you use that to your advantage? If you're an MP already sitting in the House, you've got, quote unquote, a standing start. You're already there, you know how it works, you've got your staff, your team can start the running right away. There's no build up. But it is really interesting what she points to is, what is the plan for the first 100 days, right? So no matter who wins and no matter when they win, the party has had to craft a plan for whatever leader takes the helm. And we've had so many transitions recently that haven't gone super well. So, for instance, with Mulcair, he came to, even though he was already an MP, he didn't really have a team around him. The party was prepared. The party rolled out ads very shortly, and they had a plan. But I think the party is far more really focused, actually, on preparing a plan for the new leader and have mapped out the first 100 days up until the February convention, the policy convention. And so that's an advantage that they have. But bringing in staff, getting a chief of staff, a new director of communications, it's a lot of work.
Yeah, and they will have the challenge of trying to get known to Canadians, which is sort of what we're seeing Andrew Scheer deal with as well, and there will be even less time, because like it or not, we are into the next election sort of countdown and how they deal with that. So just to remind everybody, this is the leadership showcase for the NDP. Nothing will be decided here today, but it will give people a sense of maybe where they want to land their votes. Voting starts online tomorrow for members of the NDP, of whom there are more than 124,000. And the 4 candidates over the next couple of hours are going to get up to 22 minutes to address members, play songs, have people come out and endorse them, have family members there, do whatever they can to sort of show that they have not only some ideas, but also some personality and some charisma, and that they'll be able to connect with voters. A reminder about Nikki Ashton, just in case you didn't know and you see the screen, she is pregnant with twins right now, so she has a lot going on.
And if you remember in the past, these leadership showcases are the moments when the leaders give their final pitch to members, can really be quite compelling. In the 2012 race, Nathan Cullen was quite low in terms of the polls, but his speech was so compelling. He didn't win ultimately, but he did convince a lot of people on the floor just through his speech. So watch for that. Watch for the call-outs between what happens between the candidates, who's referencing who, and who they bring out as their supporters, because whoever they bring on stage with them, they think are their key validators, and what that says, whether it's a labor group, whether it's an urban activist, so those are things to watch.
Yeah, one of the people that doesn't have a lot of caucus endorsements is Charlie Angus. He just has, I think, a couple of MPs, but he does have support from sort of the grassroots people, and he has a strategy that is looking not to the first ballot. I'll just let everybody hear from him, just so everybody gets a little taste of where their heads are at before this all gets underway.
I don't want to give specific numbers before an election. I would never do that in an election either. But just to say that the work that we've done on the ground and what we're hearing in our feedback and the teams that we have out there who are reporting back to us from British Columbia to St. John's tell us that we're exactly where we need to be. And so I don't think you're going to see this finished on a first ballot. Maybe, but our strategy from the beginning was to be ready for second ballot.
Charlie Angus. He seems to think that he has a chance at the second ballot, which is interesting because, as you say, probably, I mean, we could get a surprise and get someone on the first ballot, but not necessarily.
Yeah, the people I've talked to still think it'll be a surprise if it goes down on the first ballot. But what I think the key thing for viewers at home to watch and journalists and everyone is that the person who's fourth on the ballot, whoever it is, what is the level of their support? Because if it's only a couple thousand, that's actually not going to sway in terms of the redistribution. So those are some of the things you want to be watching for. On Charlie Angus, you're right to note the fact that he doesn't have a lot of caucus support, and there's certainly been some questions raised about that. But he also has really different and diverse support, like David Suzuki.
Libby Davies,
a former who obviously is a huge activist within the party. So that's interesting to watch as well.
I think we're just about to get underway. The first leadership candidate is going to be Guy Caron. Someone will tell me if this is him starting or not. I think so. Not yet. It's a little video. All right, so we can still talk. It's getting very dark in the room. One of the things I wanted to talk about was the last race versus this one, because one of the things I find so interesting is that there is only one leadership candidate from the last race who tried again this time, and that's Nikki Ashton.
That's right.
But other people that we thought were going to get in, Nathan Cullen would be top of mind, decided to stay out. And there's all sorts of reasons that he's given for why he decided to do that. But I wonder what that says about, about the interest in the job, the state of the party, whether people think that this is really a job that will take them into government, or whether this is maybe a two-step process. I don't know how you would read that.
I think that you would have to look at the job ahead. The road ahead is a lot of hard work. Whoever is going to win as party leader in a few weeks from now, whenever it is going to have to be in a lot of church basements, a lot of veteran halls, a lot of union halls, talking to people. So a lot of people, when examining that, the former candidates that ran in 2012, people like Nathan Cullen, people like Paul Dewar, maybe even Peggy Nash, chose not to get in because maybe they thought their time was past, or they were not to doing it again, And so I think that looking at the trajectory of who can have that kind of retail politics, who can really reach Canadians and engage them in our movement and have the right policies is really important.
And find a way to, because many people thought the last election was about the Liberal Party outflanking the NDP on the left. So find a way to open up some space for progressive voters that the Liberals may have abandoned over the course of 2 years already, because they certainly have opened that up, whether it be on breaking the electoral reform promise or other things that are important to progressive voters. There is some room there if you choose the right leader to go in and take advantage of it. Yeah.
There are many New Democrats that voted for the Liberals in 2015, and it is the job of the new leader, whoever she or he may be, to bring those voters back into the fold, and that's through inspiration, that's through policy, that's through ideas, that's through connection.
Yeah. Well, the other thing, though, that interests me is that the poll numbers, if you look at them just largely, they're not terrible. given that there's no leader. I mean, they're not great.
Yeah, they're not great.
But they're not. But they could be a lot worse.
They could be. You know, I was talking to a friend the other day, and it's like we no longer have a product to sell. We don't have a leader to sell, really. We don't. And so once we get the product, the leader, then we can have the pitch, and then we can work on the performance. But right now, our polling is around 16%. I think was the last. You know, but with Jack, often we were down 13%. But at the height of Jack's career, you know, we got him up to 31 or even higher. And so we have a lot of work to do, and we have to build that voting coalition of people from across the country, from different backgrounds, from both rural and urban ridings, and from all regions.
Okay, one of the people that wants to do that, of course, is Quebec MP Guy Caron. He's going to start making his case with some of his endorsers and members of family. Let's listen to his pitch to NDP members.
Le genre de pays que nous espérons bâtir pour nous-mêmes et pour les générations futures. En tant que néo-démocrates, nous sommes chanceux de pouvoir choisir parmi
we're happy to be able to choose among 4 excellent social democratic candidates.
As a proud steelworker, Guy convinced me that he can connect with the values we hold dearly as New Democrats, and that he can inspire us to move our party forward with progressive new ideas.
When I supported Guy, I said he was trained as an economist and a progressive through conviction. He brings together credibility and compassion. I've seen him work tirelessly to defend the interests of people in his riding, and I know that Guy is perfectly aware of the regions of Quebec.
That politics should be in the service of people, not the other way around. Quite simply, he's the best candidate to continue the work that Jack Layton started.
I believe that he's the best placed to bring together all of our strength in the country. So showcase Guy Caron. Let's see together his history, his story.
Camping back in February, who's that guy? Was a comment I heard frequently. But I kept my head down and a camping hard.
Camping launched on February 27th, and that's over 200 days ago. Was very nerve-wracking. I knew what I was getting into, but it was really nerve-wracking. I was excited. Nerveux également parce que
I was also nervous at showing my vision for the party for the first time and for the country. And to do that with my spouse and my children who were there, for us it was highly important to feel their support. Larry, my spouse, has always helped me in everything I've accomplished.
So you need to keep your individuality within the couple, but the couple helps you to maximize really the strengths that you have and to get the best of you. Valérie was able to get that of me. Ça a été le cas dans notre vie professionnelle.
That was the case at work, in personal life, and after the births of my children, Dominic and Edith, all challenges arise. In raising 2 children,
I was thinking of my kids, I was thinking of their future, I was thinking of the fact that the next generation will be worse off than the current generation. Et pour moi, c'est inacceptable dans un pays.
That's unacceptable in a country as rich as Canada.
Fight to ensure that people can have this vision. This is what I can bring to this race, to this country, and this is why I decided to run.
My name is Ken Newman. I'm the National Director of the Steelworkers. It's an honor for me to be here in our wonderful progressive family. It's particularly nice to be here in Hamilton, NDP country. We steelworkers are not shy to say it loud and clear that the NDP is the party of labor. The NDP is the party of workers. The NDP is the only party for steelworkers. The steelworkers' leadership are very proud to say loud and clear, we endorse Guy Caron as the next leader of the NDP. Let me tell you why I support Guy. Guy has put forward bold policies to build a strong, progressive Canada. Guy's knowledge of the issues has allowed him to articulate a path forward. Guy has offered solutions to the biggest challenges of our time, like climate change and inequality. And Guy always thinks of workers first. For Guy, it's not just lip service. Guy Caron comes from labor. Guy has been fighting for progressive issues for the past 30 years. In the labor movement, Guy fought so workers could receive their hard-earned pensions when Abitibi-Bowater filed for bankruptcy. At the Council of Canadians, Guy fought against privatization of our healthcare system. As the Canadian Federation of Students, as the first ever Francophone president, Guy fought Jean Chrétien's cuts to education. Guy has been there in the trenches fighting with us all of his life. He does it the only way he knows how, by bringing people together, by building bridges between Quebec and English-speaking progressives, by building bridges between rural and urban areas. As steelworkers, we know a thing or two about building bridges. And without a doubt, Guy is the bridge builder that we need. Join me. Let's make Guy Caron the leader of the New Democratic Party and the next Prime Minister of Canada.
Joining us now in Ottawa, Guy Caron, the national chairperson for the Canadian Federation of Students. Guy, can you start?
Quand je me suis impliqué en politique.
When I became involved in student politics, it wasn't necessarily being politics. I wanted to try to improve the lives of students on my campus and my university.
Politics, the federal politics, until I started joining meetings at CFS. Ce qui m'a donné l'opportunité de pouvoir rencontrer des gens.
I could meet people from various settings, diverse regions, and to understand the reality at the University of Ottawa was one reality among others.
Of the student movement really helped me a lot to understand what can be achieved when we work together. Pour moi, le leadership, c'est vraiment la capacité.
For me, leadership is the ability to inspire an entire team to be able to lead them in the same direction and have results that are common, and to be able to hope. We have to be able to obtain the best from each person for the common goal.
They have something to contribute and to get the best of them. What I learned is that the future of politics, because of the way millennials think or the way that they see politics, will be very different than what we have experienced ourselves. Il n'y aura plus vraiment de questions à savoir.
More questions to know whether people want to join a party or another party, or be a part of a team. The Reds or the Blues.
Driven by the issues. If the issues are able to connect with them, they will join you. Ils attachent beaucoup d'importance aussi aux personnalités.
I know the importance of personalities. They want people who are authentic, who inspire them.
Hello, fellow New Democrats. I'm so pleased to be with you today to take part in the NDP Leadership Showcase for Guy Caron.
Thank you for joining us for this exciting and important event before we vote to elect our new leader. We're so proud to support Guy.
Let's be clear. For the NDP, the path to victory goes through Quebec. Jack Layton knew this, and he focused on reaching out to Quebecers.
That was the winning approach. Finally, the NDP was speaking the same language as Quebecers. And I don't mean French. I mean of progressive values, of taking care of our families, our communities, and our country.
Like Jack, Guy understands the importance of building bridges, and he's uniquely positioned to lead us to win seats both in Quebec and right across the country.
He's perfectly bilingual, one of the only a handful of NDP MPs who actually increased their vote in the last election. He's the ideal foil for Trudeau, offering substance over image and authenticity over spin. Guy is ready to take on both Liberals and Conservatives in the House of Commons.
My riding of Vancouver Kingsway is a multicultural community where folks are looking for policies that make a difference in their lives. Guy understands the challenges that face working families of all kinds. I know he'll connect with voters in Vancouver and put us in the best position to win in 2019.
As leader, Guy is ready to tackle the tough challenges of our time. Above all, he's a consensus builder, from coast to coast to coast.
Friends and New Democrats, it's time to end the back and forth between Liberals and Conservatives. It's time for Canada's NDP. It's time for Guy Caron.
My friends, New Democrats and progressives across the country, we have to think about the next election in 2019 because that should be our goal. After disappointing progressives on climate change, on First Nations, on tax havens, on electoral reforms, you have an idea of what Justin Trudeau will say to stay in power, don't you? I can tell you what he will be saying. He will actually be quoting another famous Canadian Justin. He will tell progressives, is it too late to say sorry? Thank you.
Liberals have failed. They have failed to implement anything that they promised. And especially about electoral reform. They've been lying to you, and they sabotage every effort to get that. And for which they told us there's nothing else we can do. There is something we can do. The first thing we'll do as a majority NDP government will be to implement electoral reform with a mixed member proportional, moving away from first past the post, because we'll respect our commitment.
Everything is a matter of choice, and everything is a matter of political will.
En 2019, nous pouvons former le gouvernement. Nous allons.
We can form a government. We will be in power. The way to do it is by building bridges between Quebec and the rest of the country.
Believe in the values it carries. To do believe in the values of fairness, of solidarity. Les valeurs que nous défendons.
The values that we defend are those defended by Canadians. These values are those that should inspire us in 2019. We must inspire Canadians in a way that we haven't yet done.
Broadbent, Jack Layton, Thomas Mulcair, Audrey McLaughlin, Alex McDonald fought for as well. Alors, je suis au NPD.
I'm an NDP to defend these values, to advance these values, to inspire, and to provide a vision of Canada tomorrow.
Que seul un gouvernement néo-démocrate pourra mettre
the NDP government can advance.
Full fighters for justice and for fairness.
These days, I don't hear who's that guy so much. Instead, more and more people are saying, I like that Guy.
Thank you.
Bonjour, Hamilton.
Hello, Hamilton.
Field. Guy is my husband. I'm really nervous. I've never done this sort of thing before. At the beginning of the campaign, Guy's team assured me I'd never have to do this sort of thing. And that did not last. They came back to me and said, Guy can actually win this. We really need you. So here I am. I'm happy that New Democrats across Canada are seeing what I saw when I first met Guy Caron many, many years ago. He's a loving partner, a great dad, and he would be a great leader. I care a great deal about the legacy we'll leave with our children. And with Guy, I know that the NDP and our country are in good hands. With that, please join me in welcoming to the stage my husband, Guy Caron.
Bonjour tout le monde.
Hello, everyone. There you are.
Across the country. First, I want to acknowledge that we are in the traditional territory, and we are gathering in the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabeg First Nations. Est-ce que j'ai pas la meilleure femme du monde?
Don't I have the best wife in the world, the most wonderful woman in the world? Thank you. Thank you, Valérie. She spoke of possible participation in the leadership campaign. We knew it would be easy. It would mean a lot of time spent traveling.
And like all big decisions, we took it as a family, because without our loved ones, nothing is worthwhile. Dominique.
She loves me a lot. Thank you as well, Valérie, for your support.
I use the word we a lot. I've just told you how we as a family made the decision to run for the leadership. I strongly believe in the power of the word we. During this campaign, sometimes my trusted team would tell me, Guy, this is a leadership race. Why can't you say I more than we? And I would say, what's the problem with this? And what they would be saying is, well, we is great, but only you are proposing to make electoral reform the first bill of an NDP government. So sure, it's a valid point, but here's the thing, Hamilton. The NDP is the party of the we. It may be self-evident, but we is what makes everything possible. It's because of we, all of us here, that no matter who the next leader of our party will be, we will make electoral reform the first bill of the first ever federal NDP government. And I do believe we can win in 2019, and I don't believe we should be shy about saying it. To win in 2019, we'll need to focus on three things: offering a detailed, ambitious, and truly progressive agenda for change. We'll need to win back progressives by providing a clear contrast to Trudeau's Liberals, substance over flashy socks, and authenticity over empty slogans. And we absolutely need to regain our strength in Quebec. When we win in Quebec, we win seats all across the country, because then we become a real progressive alternative everywhere in Canada.
As a party, we can't go back. We have to continue the hard work of generations that preceded us and have devoted their lives to making of our party a party that is truly national in scope.
Building bridges between progressive-minded people in Quebec and the rest of the country is not easy. And I know it's not easy because it's something I've been working on my whole life. But it is possible. Listen, my friends, I've been crystal clear in my views. The state has no business telling women or men how to dress. And that's why I oppose Quebec's Bill 62. But I do believe it should be up to the Quebec's National Assembly. That's the very essence of the Sherbrooke Declaration. La laïcité de l'État au Québec.
Secularism in Quebec has never been that politicians may not show their faith. What counts as their ideas and their values. Jagmeet, you have a place in our party and in our Quebec. Jagmeet.
And you have a place in my Quebec. Let's not kid ourselves. These are not easy conversations to have, but I strongly believe that as a party, we're more than up to the challenge. I'm so proud that all three of my fellow leadership colleagues have confirmed that they support the principles of the Sherbrooke Declaration. When we put these issues on the table a few weeks back, some people told us that we should not rock the boat, that maybe we should put our heads in the sand and hoping that these issues would just go away. But maintaining growing NDP support in Quebec is vital to the future of our party. And I simply could not take the easy road out and lead these challenges for another day. Leadership is about making real decisions that affect people's life, and sometimes those decisions are difficult ones. With me as leader, we will not only hold what we have in Quebec, we'll actually grow, and we will be fulfilling Jack's dream and ensure the NDP's presence in the province for years to come. But
my campaign is not just about Quebec. It's also about bringing economic credibility to bold policy ideas. Dès le premier jour de ma campagne, j'ai affirmé.
From the first day of my campaign, I said that the fight against poverty should be a central concern of the NDP. That's why, my friends, it's the heart of my politics.
Change the way we help the most vulnerable among us. Imagine a Canada where meeting your basic needs, food, shelter, and clothing, is no longer a struggle. Imagine the huge wave of potential that we can trigger in this country. Just think, a student who doesn't need to have 2 jobs to finish a degree. A Canadian who has been unemployed for a long time, who has opportunities to finally retrain for a better job. When people don't have to struggle simply to survive, they're actually in a position to thrive and to plan for the future. And that, my friends, is worth fighting for. Et oui, le revenu de base vise à éliminer la pauvreté.
We want to eliminate poverty and to face realities, economic challenges, for example, automation in our society. The transition will be necessary for an economy based on renewable energy.
It's about committing ourselves to remedy our inaction. Le nouveau citoyen canadien de Montréal.
New citizens in Montreal can't find the same jobs and dreams, or an Atlantic worker who wants to recycle. Both have their families to feed or to care for their parents. The duty progressives to build bridges between those 2 persons in Montreal and the Atlantic provinces.
I was inspired, I was humbled by the support I felt throughout this campaign. I want to assure you, I am ready to lead. Let's do it now. Join me. Thank you. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you.
Okay, that's Guy Caron. He's just finishing up his showcase. That was me signaling the control room I was ready to start talking. That's Guy Caron. He talked for maybe about 10 minutes, making his final pitch to NDP members. We also heard from some of his key MPs that have endorsed him, the Steelworkers Union, which is also a big endorsement if you're vying to be the NDP leader, and his wife as well. This was actually, I have to say, Guy Caron, yes, has a long history in the labor movement in Quebec. And did a show called Génie en Herbe. You saw some of the funny video there. It's basically like a reach for the top, the French version. But he isn't probably well known to the rest of the country as well. And that actually was the most relaxed I've seen him, sort of walking around with a microphone, talking. So that just tells me that he's come a little bit of a ways throughout this leadership race as well.
His growth in the last part of this campaign has been phenomenal. Not only his personal growth, but certainly the momentum his campaign has had in terms of the endorsements to support the money that's starting to roll in. They knew that their challenge, his campaign manager knew going into this campaign, it was going to have to be an air war because they didn't have the money, didn't have the ground game. They had to get him as a person to be known across Canada. He was known in the activist circles. He came from the student movement, also the union movement, had good pedigree in that sense from a Democrat, but really no name recognition. I took out from his speech some really key things. You know, that Jagmeet, there's a place for you in my Quebec, that leadership is about making hard choices, you know, and that there are difficult issues that leaders really have to address. But more than that, he actually characterized the nature of his leadership. I really love that line where he said, imagine a Canada where a student doesn't have to take on 2 jobs just to pay their tuition. That was really moving.
Yeah, you're right about the Jagmeet sort of shout out and reach out, but it actually went a little bit, he danced around what has become another delicate issue, particularly if you're from Quebec. He denounced what is called Bill 62 in Quebec, which would not allow public servants to show visible signs of religious garb. So exactly what sort of Jagmeet represents. But he said he also believes that the Quebec National Assembly can do what they want, and that this isn't a federal party that's going to start dictating how provinces should be run, which is probably the only position that you can take as a Quebecer, but is a difficult one. It's a bit of a tricky position.
It's a very tricky position, and I think that's what Nantel actually first referenced, Pierre Nantel, the kind of the MP where he said, you know, Guy is the only one that has taken the correct position on this. I think that Guy has said, you know, let's leave it to the Assembly. It can be challenged in other ways. face going forward.
Yeah.
He has made clear, though, that in terms of his position, that Jagmeet Singh and people from the Sikh faith or other faiths are welcome in his Quebec and in his Canada.
Yeah, a couple other things that stood out for me as he tries to position himself again for the members, but also in contrast to the Liberals and how he would be different from the Liberals. He made it clear that his first bill, for instance, would be to bring in electoral reform, which is something that the Liberals clearly backed right away from, broke that promise and moved away from. He said that he is an economist by training, and he said that, and this is an ongoing challenge for the NDP, like it or not, that he would bring economic credibility to the party, and that he would look for things to do, like for instance, helping the poorest of the poor with a particular guaranteed income supplement.
Yeah, that policy was huge in terms of his campaign when he came up with a guaranteed income. Another thing, though, that I would just highlight in terms of his message today was that he really is trying to reach out to those New Democrats who really feel that Justin Trudeau has betrayed them in terms of the broken promises, whether it's electoral reform, whether it's pipelines, you name it. And so he actually had a really dry sense of humor in his speech just there, where he said, I think that Justin Trudeau, he used a clip in his video, Justin Trudeau will be reaching out to another Justin from Canada, Justin Bieber, and saying, you know, I'm sorry in the next election, but that's not enough. The real leader who's developing progressive policies needs to deliver on them, things like electoral reform.
Okay, Charlie Angus is next up, and this is a little video before we hear directly from the Ontario MP. Here we go.
Ma femme et moi, on a ouvert une maison pour les sans-abri au centre-ville de Toronto. J'avais 25 ans. Puis, on a déménagé dans le Nord pour élever notre famille. On a fondé un magazine sur les politiques et la culture du Nord. C'est là que je me suis battu contre l'importation de déchets toxiques chez nous.
I worked with Jack Layton in this fight. He encouraged me to run for public office. And I brought that grassroots activism to Parliament, fighting for blue-collar workers, the LGBTQ community, and artists. But everything became more urgent when I met 13-year-old Shannon Kustashian from Attawapiskat. I watched her grow into an extraordinary civil rights leader, fighting the brutal injustices faced by Indigenous children in this country. We lost her to an accident in 2010, but I think of her every single day. Children only have one childhood, and once it's gone, it never comes back. I'm running for leader so that I can tell Shannon's generation that there is reason for hope, that this nation really does have their back.
Qu'elle peut compter sur nous.
Thank you. My name is Serena Kostadjian, and I'd like for you to take a look at this photo behind me. It's a photo of my sister Shannon. You may have heard of her, but she started the largest youth-driven human rights movement in Canadian history. When she was just 13, Shannon found out that her school, our school in Attawapiskat, was in such terrible shape that Aboriginal children on reserve don't have equal access to educational funding as other kids do in Canada. And Shannon, she was always outspoken. And she let everybody know how unfair that was. And the idea caught on. Young people from all over Canada joined in the fight for our equal education. And eventually, after 10 years, 10 long years, we finally got a new school in Attawapiskat. Thank you. And one of the people who helped Shannon and my community the most was Charlie Angus. He encouraged her. He encouraged her to become active because he told her she had a right to be angry. So he helped her go to Ottawa to meet with the Prime Minister, and he also took Shannon and I into his own home and treated us as family. And he took this photo, which has now become the iconic symbol for Shannon's dream. It's been said that true leaders don't create more followers, but create more leaders. That's why I'm supporting Charlie Angus as the next NDP leader. Because he has a proven record of helping people help themselves and a record of compassion for our most vulnerable people. Charlie showed the young people in my community that we have the power.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Howard, and I'm here to tell you why I'm supporting Charlie Angus for leader. I've had the privilege of serving as a cabinet minister in an NDP government. I know what we can achieve when we have the power to put our principles into action. I want a leader who can win elections and whose principles have been tested. Charlie is a principled New Democrat. He voted for marriage equality and to protect the rights of families like mine, my wife and I and our 2 kids, even though his own church threatened to kick him out. Charlie se tient debout pour que les enfants et les jeunes.
Charlie stands up for children and young Indigenous people, and he is an ambassador for reconciliation and justice. I now work in the union movement. Charlie has shown his solidarity by visiting workers on the picket line. He's always worked for workers, and he knows that defending our environment must include defending good jobs.
And Quebecers who have left us. Charlie has a plan to rebuild our party and to put regional organizers back on the ground where they're needed. He'll have us ready for the next election. I believe that when we get to see Charlie face off against Justin, there will be no doubt about who really has our back. If we want to build the nation of our dreams, to fulfill the promise of Tommy Douglas and the legacy of Jack Layton, we need a leader who can take us to government and who will never sacrifice our values to get there. Charlie is that leader. Every day, Charlie shows us that people have the power.
Hey folks, I'm Andrew Cash, and I'm thrilled to be here among so many friends. You know, I've had the honor of working with all the leadership candidates. They are all friends of mine. They're incredible people. Nikki, Jagmeet, Guy, and Charlie. But, you know, I've known Charlie Angus for a long time, as he's showed you. And I got to tell you, I have never met anyone with more heart, more passion, and more integrity in my life. Ayant moi-même été politicien.
I myself have been a politician. I can say to you that I've rarely seen anyone work so hard. And he does it for the people in his riding, for his party, and for his country.
Charlie walks the talk. As he's, and he does. I mean, we all know that. I mean, as he showed you, yes, we did start a band when we were teenagers. And yes, he did start Home for Homeless People right then when we started that band. Well, what he doesn't tell you is that we were getting very successful. We had a clear path to a different kind of life, and Charlie decided, no, this is the right thing to do. This is what has to be done right now. And you know, he has never stopped. Il est toujours là pour écouter et se battre.
He's always there to listen, to fight for all Canadians that have been marginalized, and for people, more and more people, who have not been able to find a place in our economy.
And contract worker, before he entered politics, Charlie knows we've got to address head-on the fact that too many workers, particularly young workers, are just a bike accident away from poverty. Il faut changer ça.
We have to change that situation. I think that Charlie Angus is the leader that can do it.
Is he a slick backroom operator? No. No, he's not. Okay. Does he say stuff he doesn't believe in? No. No, he doesn't. Is he kind of noisy sometimes? Yeah, he is that. Yeah, for sure. But you know, when you're fighting alongside folks who are getting left out, left behind, shut down, unseen and unheard, you know, sometimes that's noisy business. And that's who he is. That's what we need in our party. That's what millions of Canadians are looking for in the NDP, and that's why I'm so proud to be here today to introduce Charlie Angus as the next leader of our party and the next Prime Minister of Canada. Charlie Angus.
Yes. Hey, Joe. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Hello, Hamilton. Merci, Megwitch.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm very proud to be here today with you, my friends. We've succeeded. I'm very proud to walk in the footsteps of Jack Layton, Tommy Douglas, Alexa McDonough, Thérèse Casgrain. And during this whole leadership race, I've realized that you can present an optimistic vision to replace these cynical policies in Ottawa. And that's why I'm here.
And I want to thank my friend Andrew Cash, who I've known for so long and who started me on this road of stirring things up when we were just punk kids. And we're still giving her. And Jennifer, je te remercie pour ton leadership.
Jennifer, thank you for your leadership, for your devotion to our movement.
And Serena, I just want to say how moved I am that you were here to speak up for me. You know, I remember in grade 8, and you went down to Ottawa to explain the squalor and the brutal conditions that children in Attawapiskat were being forced to live with. And you spoke with such dignity and grace to politicians who didn't have a clue. And remember, afterwards I asked you, I said, Serena, were you nervous when you were speaking in those halls of power? Do you remember? And you said, I wasn't intimidated because I was speaking for my people. You and your sister taught me and taught the nation that Indigenous youth have incredible power to make change. Thank you. And this is why I'm here, to be a partner, to be an ally. Because the days when children go to Ottawa to beg for schools or be left alone on the front lines of a horrific suicide crisis, it has to end. And it will. And I will be in Parliament this fall to look the Prime Minister in the eye and say, enough. Enough with the obstructions, the prevarications, the 150 years of broken promises. Reconciliation, it's not a hashtag. It has to be made real for this generation of children right now. Because I am so tired of going to their funerals. We should be celebrating their graduations. That's what we need to do in this country. C'est clair, mes amis.
It's clear, my friends, this wave of suicides, this is not a crisis caused by young people. It's a crisis caused by the Canadian government. What kind of country could choose to clip the wings of their young people? I want to change that, and that's why I'm here.
Our movement is needed now more than ever, my friends, in Parliament and on the ground. I was in Vancouver last week, where the eviction rates of seniors is skyrocketing. You know, there is something fundamentally wrong in this country when seniors can't afford to live in the cities that they built? It's got to stop. A national housing program and nothing less. And when I talk with students burdened down with student debt who are unable to live in the cities where they've worked, they've taken the risks. They've invested in their future, and this government has let them down. But we, my friends, are going to make this right. Because this fall, I will go into Parliament and I will challenge Justin Trudeau. Work with us. We can address this crushing level of student debt. Okay, here's the thought. Bombardier CEOs, they call up Justin and they get interest-free loans. Why not Canada's young people? We can make this happen.
When I talk with men and women, the workers across Canada, it's clear that they don't believe that Ottawa understands their reality. And this fall, the government is going to renegotiate NAFTA. It'll be an open bar for lobbyists, my friends. That's the way it'll be. Do you trust Justin Trudeau, Donald Trump, and Brian Mulroney to defend your interests, the interests of the working men and women in Canada? Not me. I'll be there to defend your interests in Parliament. You can count on me.
And you know, I never forgot one of the first things that was said to me when I started to launch this campaign. I got stopped at the Tim Hortons in South Porcupine, Ontario, by a 68-year-old man who told me he's going back to work underground in the mine on the drills because his pension was robbed by corporate insiders. And in Canada, that kind of theft is not only legal, they get bonuses for doing it. Indeed, and he said to me, listen, I've been promised the moon over the years by politicians. I have one simple question. If you get in, will you have my back? Well, yes, I will. Yes, I will, because people need a leader in Ottawa who will fight for them, but who will build with them. You know, on this campaign, I've seen the incredible goodness, the tolerance, the resourcefulness of the Canadian people. And let me tell you about my good friend Colleen Wake. She works at the Cami plant in Ingersoll, the most efficient automobile manufacturing plant in North America. And Canadian taxpayers gave millions to bail out GM. And her workers have given them everything. But you know what we've learned is with the 1%, it's never enough. Now they want to ship the jobs to Mexico. So today, Colleen and her workers are setting up the picket lines to defend the Canadian jobs that Justin Trudeau and Andrew Scheer will never defend. And I will be with them. And you, I know, my friends, we will be with the workers at Cami, because this is the front line. And let me tell you about meeting with the IBEW energy workers in Edmonton. They're training the oil patch workers to build a green, sustainable economy with good-paying jobs because blue-collar Canadians see the future. And I want to tell you about Jeff Pistorius. He started a delivery business with a bicycle and grew it into a large cooperative employing dozens of people with decent wages in downtown London. And when I talk to these workers, what they tell me is they want a partner in Ottawa to build livable cities and economies that work for people, and we will be that partner. We will. Nous faisons face à trois crises majeures.
We're facing three major crises. We need more economic justice, environmental justice, and justice for Indigenous communities. These three items cannot be separated.
And there's another thing I've learned in the 9 months of this campaign, is that leadership, it's not about the leader. It's about giving people a reason to believe that they truly have the power to make change. This is the work I have done my whole life.
On a beaucoup de pain sur la planche, mes amis, mais je suis le candidat.
We have a lot of work ahead of us, but I'm the candidate who has experienced the vision to unite our movement, to provide energy, give energy to our militants, our activists who will be working for the 2019 election.
We have a lot of work to do, but it starts by looking out for each other in these divisive times, because we need to remember that what brings us together as a nation is so much greater than the false politics that divide us. And never forget that the real division that exists in this country is economic. And bringing people together is what we do as New Democrats. Bringing together the communities from the mosques in 905 and the youth leaders in Treaty 9. Standing up with this Hamilton steelworker and the bike couriers in Toronto. Réunir les artistes de Montréal.
We have to gather together artists in Montreal, employees of the forestry sector in Jonquière.
They may have the money and the lobbyists and the inside track, but our history in the New Democratic Party, in the labor movement, in the women's movement, in the environmental movement, at the grassroots has proven time and time and time again that people have the power to make change. And we're going to bring that change to Ottawa. Because this is our party. This is our movement. This is why we are here, my friends. So let's get it done. I got your back. Comptez sur moi. People.
Count on me.
That's Charlie Angus, the second leadership contender we've heard from today at this NDP Leadership Showcase. An Ontario MP, an MP from Northern Ontario, who, as you heard there, main theme, I think well illustrated by the people on that stage, an appeal to the grassroots and to get back to what the NDP would call a movement rather than a party. Kathleen, it's so interesting to see. It's all the same party, but different ways of approaching it and different people supporting it.
And Angus really relying on a lot of the themes that Jack used to, like I've got your back, lots of imagery that he used of Jack in his opening video. You know, in many ways, Charlie is the party's troubadour, the party's part, the singer, the one who has the chorus, and he really emphasized that today in his presentation. I mean, obviously the most moving thing that I took away from it was not only his rock and roll partner, Andy Cash, being up there and giving him his support, but really it was the sister of Shannon, Serena, who gave a really important speech about and testament to Charlie's commitment to Indigenous issues.
Yeah, I mean, he is a sensitive fella, I think that's fair to say, but he also has a fair amount of, I'm not sure what the right word is. He has a pointy edge. And you did hear a little bit of that during the speech when he said, I'll be in Parliament this fall to say enough is enough to the Prime Minister. I mean, he's saying that because he knows that Jagmeet Singh will not be.
That's right.
He's making that very clear. I also thought he made an interesting point that I'm not sure worked for him, to be fair, about people not trusting Trump, Trudeau, and Mulroney to defend us. I don't know that people see Trump and Trudeau in the same sort of vein. So I understand that maybe he's trying to say that these are establishment politicians.
For sure, there's a mention of Brian Mulroney, and do you trust these guys to be negotiating and fighting for you? He referenced actually the Ingersoll plan, a uniform plan that builds cards, and actually they're going to strike deadline tonight, and they really see actually the issue of the workers in that plan as related to NAFTA, so saying that he doesn't trust Trudeau or Trump to negotiate the deal.
Right. It is interesting, though, that he talks about the movement, right? That is sort of more where Jack Layton came from, and he certainly talks about Tommy Douglas, Jack Layton, as opposed to sort of the traditional political party. And they even made a big deal about the fact that he doesn't know how to do the backroom ops and all the, the greasing of hands and all that kind of stuff. That's not who he is.
He's a real, he actually prides himself on the differentiation he has with Trudeau. Trudeau being the silver spoon, the polish, the nice socks, the good hair. You know, Charlie often makes the jokes that, my $100 suit that's
I think he bought a new suit just for this race.
That's
he only has two now or something.
And he does come from an activist roots. He comes from a rural community, but he does have great appeal both in urban and rural centers. That'll play with him. Obviously, Charlie's challenge in this race has always been his ability to speak French and reach out to the Quebec community.
What about the fact that he is just playing, maybe just is the wrong term, but he is playing more to the grassroots? that he doesn't have many caucus endorsements, that there is no big name behind him. Is that, I wonder, I don't know how much those things affect things, but that becomes problematic at some point, I would think.
Yeah, and I think the strategy of his campaign strategist going into this would have been, okay, well, we know that Charlie, out of these 4 candidates, has the highest name recognition going in. So amongst members, they know who he is. He's been in caucus since 2004. He's been in caucus the longest. He's always been a front player in the caucus. When I worked under Jack, we used to always put Charlie out as our street fighter. He was the one that would take the tough hits in question periods. So certainly they played to that advantage. They said they're going to the grassroots. They weren't going to work to consolidate some of those support within caucus, or even get those big names of the MLAs like Jagmeet has in BC or in other parts of the country.
And maybe it doesn't matter if it's the members who are voting. I mean, maybe that's the message that he's sending in the end.
Well, whether you're one caucus, federal caucus member, or whether you're one provincial MLA, you still only get one vote. So in this system where it is one member, one vote, where it is a ranked ballot, he has to have the widest appeal. And he also has been working hard to get that second ballot support. So actually a very interesting posting on Friday night from Charlie Angus on his Facebook page, which showed a lot of pictures of him and Guy Caron together side by each. So that whole play where you're playing for people's second choice is going to be really important as the weeks go ahead.
And I mean, he did have 2 former politicians on stage and then 2 real people, which I actually think is very useful. It shows that you can connect. He told a lot of anecdotes of people he'd met during on the road. Again, something that Jack Layton did a lot of. I mean, all politicians do, but you cast your mind back to that a little bit.
And speaking to about the miner who had to go back down in the mine, but also having Serena on stage, the sister of Shannon, was so important because it's a testament to his fight that he's been going consistently, backing people like Cindy Blackstock in their fight for equal funding for children on First Nations reserve. This has been an issue very close to Charlie's heart. No one can criticize him of being inauthentic on that point.
Okay, now we're going to go to the only woman in this race, Nikki Ashton. This is her video, and we'll hear from her directly. Stay tuned.
For other people. Instead, she empowers us to talk about the things that matter.
I support Nikki Ashton because all summer my home has been filled with wildfire smoke, and I need to ask for help to afford the medication that I need to breathe.
She's committed, as I am. She believes in justice, in the environment, and the economy.
Progressive leader with bold and principled policies.
Because I want an NDP that will do for education what Tommy Douglas did for healthcare.
Parce qu'elle a mis de l'avant un plan clair pour lutter contre la discrimination et contre la violence faite aux femmes.
And violence against women.
That is fair, accessible, and just for all.
Because of policy. Her policies are the most progressive, they're the most comprehensive, and they're the most transformational.
Because Nikki has inspired an entire generation to fight for our rights and the rights of others.
Because she's bringing change to a system that is failing many.
Because she is a smart, strong, experienced, progressive woman who will take our party in the right direction.
Parce que je trouve que c'est une source d'inspiration. She's a source of inspiration for women everywhere, and she's brought some intelligent analysis, well thought out ideas.
Because she is the strong, visionary leader Canada needs right now.
I'm inspired by people across this country. Le Québec, une province progressiste où les militants, les militantes et les mouvements sociaux ont pavé la voie pour la gauche et sont devenus une source d'inspiration. BC, where environmental justice is the BC way. The prairies, where grassroots politics go hand in hand with a commitment to social justice. You can tell that this is where it all started, and this is home. Our north, where Indigenous struggles and resistance are leading the way. Ontario, a province of progressive activists seeking nothing less than changing the system. The Atlantic, where many are leading the fight for people over profit and privilege. People have shared many powerful stories. I think of standing with the steelworkers in Hamilton who are fighting for justice, for dignity. When we stood at a plant taken over by a foreign company that has brought in scabs and slashed employment because of Liberal and Tory economic policies. I think of the many inspiring activists, many strong women like Rhiannon and Linnea, who are fighting against pipelines in BC and New Brunswick, fighting for Indigenous rights, fighting for their communities, and fighting to transition to a carbon-free economy. I'm running for leader of Canada's NDP because we need a bold, progressive agenda to tackle growing inequality and catastrophic climate change.
Plusieurs Canadiens font face à la précarité d'emploi. Ils méritent un gouvernement qui fait preuve de leadership au lieu de leur dire, et je cite, de s'habituer. Inacceptable.
We can win in 2019 with a principled, progressive agenda. Principled politics is smart politics. We know that principled leaders rise to power when we're clear on which side we're on the side of working people and those struggling on the margins. We are building a movement for social, environmental, and economic justice together. Join us.
Like Nikki, I dare to dream.
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 J'ose rêver de justice sociale, économique et environnementale.
Like Nikki, I dare to dream
of social, economic,
and environmental justice.
We're building a movement.
Join me.
Join me.
Join me.
Join me.
Join me. Join us. Vote for Nikki.
C'est la résilience, la passion et le dévouement de Nikki qui m'assurent qu'elle est la personne idéale pour mener le mouvement pour un changement progressiste au Canada. Un mouvement inclusif, innovateur et conscient de la nécessité de créer un pays qui répond réellement aux besoins des Canadiens.
I hope you'll join me in supporting Nikki Ashton for leader of the NDP, because together we can challenge the status quo, we can have renewal in our party, and we can create a country that truly works for everybody. Bye.
Je tiens à reconnaître que nous sommes en territoire Mississauga non cédé. Ce qui a été déterminant dans mon choix d'appuyer Nikki, c'est quand j'ai réalisé que les jeunes néo-démocrates dans Saint-Hyacinthe-Bagotte appuient Nikki.
Supported Nikki, what message of hope. I've been a member for 10 years. I was recruited by Jack Layton and Thomas Mulcair, and I understood to what extent it's important to have an inspiring leader who's a source of motivation for all of us. The first time I heard Nikki was probably at the Halifax Convention in 2009, and I said, wow, what a woman, full of passion and determination. And since then, every time I listen to Nikki, I hear a woman with heart who knows people and can connect with Quebec and the rest of Canada. I need a leader who makes me want to change the world. Nikki knows how to inspire us with her vision where no one is forgotten. All those who've heard her speeches know to what extent she conveys her convictions and her energy. During the campaigns in 2007 and 2008, I understood that Quebec could connect with the NDP. And now I know that one day we will have the NDP government that Canada deserves to have. And I imagine easily Nikki in 2019 in a Saint-Hyacinthe farm, well, she will inspire producers for supply management. It's not just to find speeches. We have to do this to ensure, with concrete means, our food security. We have to choose a leader thinking how the public wants to have true political leaders who speak with their heart and give them some hope. But mainly, people want a leader who has the courage to take the necessary steps to achieve our ideals. Nikki has presented a program that is complete, putting into action our values, our principles, and our convictions. I support Nikki. She embodies progressive ideals in her ideals, actions, and primarily in her way of being with people. She cares for social justice and wants to build an inclusive movement so that everyone has a place. She understands the realities of Quebec and represents the future of the NDP. I'm very proud to introduce the candidacy of Nikki Ashton as the next leader of the NDP. So have a movement together. Let's vote for Nikki.
During my undergrad at Brock University, I was part of a club called Brock Women in the House, where I had the opportunity to shadow a female MP and connect with female MPs from all parties. I remember when I met Nikki, I had tears running down my face as I finally had the opportunity to meet my role model. While I was hyperventilating and trying to remember how to breathe, Nikki came up to me and gave me a hug and said, "It's such an honor to meet you, Arishana. You are my inspiration and my role model." I was so awestruck that Nikki Ashton, a well-experienced MP with so many accomplishments, looked up to me as her inspiration. After meeting Nikki, she took me under her wings and taught me so much about politics. I had the opportunity to work in her parliamentary office, where I helped organize the first ever Precarious Workers Forum. Seeing Nikki in action was amazing. Whether that be holding the Prime Minister to account in question period in Ottawa, canvassing for a by-election in Toronto, or working with students on the East Coast on ending precarious work, Nikki was always there. She inspired me to continue the fight for justice, to build a movement, and to continue to inspire many young women and Canadians. Nikki Ashton has taught me that it's okay to be myself and to never let people get in the way of my dreams and my passion. Nikki's always been there for me, and I'm so proud today to be standing up here for her. That is why I am supporting Nikki Ashton for the leader of the NDP. Her passion, her determination, and her strength when fighting for social justice is what we need from the next leader of our party. It's time for a Prime Minister whose feminism goes beyond a catch slogan. It's time for fundamental change. With Nikki as our leader, we can build a movement for social, economic, and environmental justice.
It is such an honor to be here in front of you to talk about my good friend, Nikki Ashton. Throughout the campaign, Nikki has been a strong advocate for fairness, equity, and progressive policy. Over the last few months, she's proven her dedication to the issues she and I care about. Issues like accessible education with free tuition, good jobs in modern industry, and a place at the table for everyone in Canadian society. That is why I endorse Nikki Ashton, and that is why I continue to support Nikki Ashton. Nikki inspires people wherever she goes, and as a Prairie sister, I can tell you that the way Nikki stands up for her community inspires me. It is time now for me to introduce my good friend, Nikki Ashton, our next leader and Canada's next Prime Minister.
Thank you, Arishana. Merci, Brigitte.
Thank you, Brigitte.
Acknowledging that we are in the traditional territory of the Mississauga people. Something is happening in our country. We are building a movement from coast to coast. Nous lançons un mouvement.
We are building a movement from coast to coast. This is a movement for fundamental change.
Manitoba, a mining town, a union town in our north on NCN traditional territory. I'm the daughter of immigrants. My first language is not English or French, it's Greek. Je suis fière d'avoir appris le...
I'm proud to have learned French. It's fundamental for me to properly understand what's happening in that country.
Community. In the process, I learned or even studied a few languages: Espanol, Ukrainsky, Ruski, Putonghua, and Cree. Growing up, I saw the tremendous paradox, though, of Canada. In a region that is so wealthy, Indigenous communities live in third world conditions, and more value-added jobs are being taken away. And I saw firsthand the power of the labor movement in fighting for fairness. I grew up knowing which side I was on. And I believe that we are at a crossroads today as a party, as a movement, and as a country. We are facing growing inequality and catastrophic climate change, and a resurgence of the politics of hate. La crise des inégalités.
The crisis of inequality in the country has to be underscored. In Canada, there's rapid growth, even more than in the U.S. More than 37% of income gains in Canada over the past 25 years were only for the 1%.
Hollowed out, and it's the lowest levels of employment since the 1960s. 2 Canadian billionaires own the same amount of wealth as 11 million Canadians. The middle class is eroding, and poor and working class Canadians are falling further behind. Inequality has many faces. Les inégalités ont plusieurs visages.
Inequality has many faces. The Indigenous, racialized, gendered, persons with disabilities, queer, trans, and more there's a new face, that of intergenerational inequality. Young people, members of the millennial generation,
my generation, are facing the prospect of being worse off than previous generations. Precarious employment, sky-high tuitions and high student debts, and add to that housing prices and even rental prices where people can't get in. This is the reality, an increasingly precarious life. I took this time to travel the country to listen to millennials and community members, and I will never forget their stories. Like the young woman in Windsor who moved back into her home city, into her parents' basement to get a 3rd degree, hoping to finally be able to find work. But one thing she said she knew she wasn't going to be able to do was to have kids, because she could never give them what her parents gave her. This didn't just happen. It is the result of political and economic decisions, decades of liberal and conservative economic policies like privatization, deregulation, outsourcing, austerity, foreign takeovers, and job-killing trade deals. We've had 150 years of liberal and conservative governments, and if anybody believes that there's any significant difference between them, just look at what's happening with NAFTA. Au lieu de défendre les emplois des...
Defending Canadian jobs, Justin Trudeau has a great idea, inviting one of the architects of NAFTA as a major advisor in commercial trade.
And I'll say it again, liberal, Tory, same old story. Fellow New Democrats, there is a better way. We can build a society based on people, not profits. It starts with fundamental change, tackling inequality through tax reform that will ensure that millionaires and billionaires pay their fair share. Nous utiliserons ces revenus.
Will we use that revenue to improve the quality of life of the entire population, to improve our healthcare system by adopting a pharmacare that is universal, dental insurance, and mental health services.
Education is a right where nearly 2/3 of jobs require post-secondary education. We can, we must, and we will roll back and eliminate tuition fees in Canada. We can and we will be bold by establishing a national child care system, and we will create jobs in this country, good jobs. Nous créerons des emplois.
We will create good jobs thanks to massive investments in housing, in being daring, by supporting the new green economy.
Ownership for the public good, including sending a clear message to the Liberals that if they privatize it, we will nationalize it when we form government. We can and we will bring about economic justice through fundamental change. Nous ne devons pas nous douter de la...
We mustn't doubt the truth of climate change as well. This is real, and the ravages are already visible. We are faced with a true catastrophe if we don't act seriously as a country and planet.
Realizing that climate change didn't just happen. It is the result of an unsustainable economic system. And let's be clear, the solution will not come from big oil or from liberals and conservatives that have failed us so far. We must be bold. Scientists are telling us that even the next 3 years will be critical, so we must act now. And there is no room to sit on the fence. I have been clear in opposing pipelines. We cannot violate Indigenous rights and destroy the environment. And we will use public ownership, a crown corporation, to spearhead shifting to a carbon-free economy.
We must act to oppose the growth of inequality and climate change. We must also act to face an emerging threat. The politics of hatred and division, anti-Semitism, xenophobia, homophobia, transphobia, and misogyny in Canada and elsewhere.
Here at home, we must fight for justice abroad. It is time for the NDP to be a principled voice, again, for peace and justice in Palestine and the Middle East. And we must speak out against human rights abuses and for international law, whether it's the Rohingya Muslims or Tamils or Kurds. Le NPD et le Canada doivent porter...
NDP Canada must bring a voice of peace throughout the world. This begins by rejecting massive growth of military expenditures initiated by the Liberals.
We must be bold. Incremental change won't cut it. Bold, progressive politics is smart politics. Les politiques progressistes audacieuses sont les politiques.
Bold, progressive policies are the politics of the future. In order to connect with Canadians, and we can rebuild our party in order to renew links with victories in the next election.
For a moment, in the next election, the largest single voting group will be the millennial generation. On social and economic issues, millennials are one of the most progressive generations in history. And in the last election, Justin Trudeau promised real change. He received record support from young people. And, of course, young people came out and crushed that idea that they don't vote. The reality was Trudeau did not deliver. He lied. In fact, he has broken promise after promise after promise. We can offer Canadians fundamental change. Women will be critical in the next election. Working people, the declining middle class, Indigenous people, racialized Canadians are looking for progressive ideas. Les politiques progressistes sont...
Progressive policies are important in Quebec as well. With its progressive tradition, its activist movements, and social solidarity, we can build a new orange wave. We need progressive politics.
Not driven by polling and PR, but by principles, policies, and passion. So Justin Trudeau, if you are watching, I have a message for you. Enjoy being Prime Minister while it lasts. Because in the next election, I know you're going to try to recycle your promises. You may even take a few more selfies. But Canadians know that only the NDP will bring real change. Tommy Douglas dared us to dream. I dare to dream. I ask you to join us in building a movement for social, environmental, and economic justice for all. Je vous invite de nous rejoindre.
I invite you to join us.
Thank you. Merci.
Nikki Ashton, the third of four candidates that we're hearing from today at the NDP Leadership Showcase. The only woman in the race, the youngest person in the race, the only person pregnant with twins in the race. That's true, sure. That alone. And again, a very strong appeal to the left left-leaning part of the party. The whole party's left, but the further left-leaning part. And also to young people, which is a part of her campaign that she's gone very hard after from the beginning.
That's right.
Which is interesting.
And as she's been sitting in caucus since 2008, and during that time, she's actually held a number of different critic roles in terms of the critic for women's issues, but also she's done a lot of work on precarious work and reaching out to those communities, the students, people in the quote-unquote gig economy, to kind of figure out how we can actually adapt to the new changing nature of work. So you see a lot of her policies that she's rolling out actually address those things. In addition to addressing things like, she's been very clear since the beginning that she's against pipelines.
Yeah. And she didn't say that for no reason. It's because other people haven't been quite as equivocal as she has.
That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I also thought I think to date is the only one that's gone hard after the Prime Minister.
Well, what I actually smirked or smiled about was, she's not afraid to bring a fight. And she actually threatened, she said, be careful, Trudeau, this is your last run at Prime Minister. It's going to change in 2019. So that kind of bravado is very indicative of who she is as a person. She's a fighter. She's strong. She's got a clear vision for her policy. She said at the end of the speech, we're not about polls or PR. We're about policy and principles. And that's really where Nikki stands.
And she talked a little bit to people about where she comes from, Thompson, Manitoba, a union town, daughter of immigrants. Of course, she also comes, the part that she's not perhaps advertising as much, from a very political family. Her father, Steve Ashton, was actually in a leadership race of his own in Manitoba provincially.
Just yesterday.
Yeah, and
just
he
yesterday.
Lost.
Yes.
He lost. He lost by not a small margin. He lost to Wapkanu, who is now the Manitoba NDP leader, who incidentally, I believe, supports Jagmeet Singh, who's the next candidate we're going to see on the stage. But she does have a lot of, she has spent a lot of time developing the policy, whether it be the free tuition. I know she's done a lot of work on internships, for instance, and things that need to be done there. And she talked a lot about climate change and how there needs to be action right away. So she has been around long enough now to have clear positions on things and know where she thinks the party needs to go.
And what's interesting is that she did run in 2012, and she got, at that point, around 5.7% of the vote. That said, there are many more candidates, but she got around 3,500, I believe, votes in that race. So it'll be interesting to see as these ballots come in on October 1st, did she increase her vote? Certainly she has increased, I think, her popularity across Canada. When I talk to communities in the debate, she's had good show-outs in terms of events all across the country, from BC to the east. So that's really interesting. I think that also the stuff that she's done on racialized communities and Indigenous communities, she comes from a very large rural riding, and she actually has the support of the two Indigenous MPs in our caucus, Romina Saganash and Georgina Gelebois, and so both of them are backing Nikki.
I should tell people that there's lots of paraphernalia, political paraphernalia going around, but the T-shirts of her team caught my eye. They say they're black and they say people over profit, which very much sums up, again, what kind of direction she wants to take the party. And I would say, and you correct me if I'm wrong, she's maybe a little more in line with Charlie Angus from the grassroots sort of perspective.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to put money on where some of, if Nikki doesn't make it in the top rung of ballots, if she is to drop off in the first or second round, I would think that some of her supporters would be drawn towards Charlie's platform. But, we'll have to see. But certainly those T-shirts said a very clear message, people before profits. And she actually said in her speech today, you privatize it, we'll nationalize it. And she actually has a piece in her platform which talks about postal banking, moving to a postal banking system across Canada.
I did see a lot of those people in T-shirts at Starbucks, though.
But they really do believe. They really do. They do think of it as a movement. They're building a movement. She very much embraces the Bernie Sanders, Jeremy Corbyn kind of grassroots, and has been trying to build on that.
Okay, so we've heard from 3 of the 4 candidates in this 2017 leadership campaign. Just a reminder, we have 1 left to go. It's Jagmeet Singh. He's the Ontario MPP. He has a seat in Queen's Park. And he claims that his campaign has signed up 47,000 members out of the more than 124 people that will be voting starting tomorrow online, although some people have already mailed in ballots. What would you say is his challenge here today in this room and to NDP members?
I think his challenge from the very beginning was always going to be appeal right across Canada, not just in Quebec, which has been identified very clearly recently through the comments of Pierre Nantel, but even in rural ridings and also get his name recognition known across the country. What's interesting about Jagmeet's campaign, though, because of that, they have a very aggressive ground game. The campaign manager there is probably one of the NDP's best organizers, and she has had...
Who is it?
Her name is Michael Hay, and she has had a very aggressive ground game campaign where they're actually already having mail-in ballot parties, and they're actually preferring to go to the mail-in ballot so people's ballots are locked in. They know that those votes are in the bag, and then they can just work on persuasion. So they've had these events all across Canada, and they've had a lot of these ballots already in and locked in.
Okay, so this is our final contestant or candidate tonight. Again, no outcome tonight, but let's listen to the pitch that Jagmeet Singh and some of his endorsers are going to make. Here you go.
Here with my colleague, my friend Jenny Kwan, all my other colleagues, and with all of you to talk about someone who is truly extraordinary, Jagmeet Singh. From the first time I met Jagmeet, I was struck by his respect, his humanity, and his willingness to listen. Jagmeet is someone who talks not just about the values of solidarity and opening and social justice. He personifies these values. He's a politician who's given himself the challenge of reaching out to everyone beyond our traditional base, and who has taken up this challenge in a truly spectacular fashion. I want an NDP that speaks to young people, to members of cultural communities, to persons from the sexually diverse community, to workers, men and women, to Quebecers, men and women. And I want an NDP that knows how to speak to those who are not naturally drawn by politics or our party. I want an NDP that's truly ready to listen to everyone. With Jagmeet, we'll be able to reach out to these people, to start a dialogue with them. With them, the NDP will be able to grow, and with Jagmeet, we'll be able to win the next elections, and we'll finally be able to build a more fair, more green, and more shared country. And this is something that we're going to do with Jagmeet. We're going to do it with all of you. We're going to do it with all our hearts and with courage.
I'm the MP for Vancouver East. I am delighted to join with my fellow members of Parliament to support Jagmeet Singh to be the next leader of Canada's NDP. More than ever, we need Canadians to be engaged in the political process. We need it for our families. We need it for our communities. We need it for our democracy. As a New Democrat, I am so proud of our history and our accomplishments. But for us to bring it to the next phase, we need to move beyond third-party status. Our job is more than just to hold the Liberals, then the Conservatives, then the Liberals to account. Our job is to form the next federal government. That means we need a leader who can connect and engage the hearts and minds of everyday Canadians in an unprecedented way. We need a leader who can spark the interest and make our political movement relevant to them. We need someone who can ignite their inner New Democratic values. I'm supporting Jagmeet Singh, a dynamic personality who can do just that. He is genuine, he is humble, and he is so respectful. From his mother, he learned that if we lift up the people around us, we all rise. From the teachings of the elders of the First Peoples, we've learned that we are one. So friends, with love and courage, let us work together and make history. Please join me in supporting Jagmeet Singh to be the next leader of Canada's NDP.
Look how the sun now raising up, and the crowd now waking up. The atmosphere have vibes, and nothing can break it up. So let me see your hands up, so everybody now put your hands up, so if you're ready for the road, let your friend them know. We're ready for the road.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And to the team, thank you. Wow, thank you very much. It's an incredible honor to be here. Hi, everybody. How's Hamilton doing? How you feeling? All right, bonjour, Hamilton.
Hello, Hamilton.
I would like by acknowledging the lands on which we're gathered today, traditional territories of the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe. Merci d'être ici.
Thank you so much. Your energy inspires me every day.
When you're trying to do something big, it's not achieved alone. It takes a team. On stage with me right now is just one part of our cross-country team. And I want to show them a lot of love and a lot of gratitude for all their incredible work, friends and colleagues and supporters. And like all the other candidates know, all of us had tremendous teams that have built up an incredible movement. So let's take a moment now to show all of the teams some love. Let's give them a collective round of applause, all the wonderful teams. Thank you. Throughout our campaign, I've been connecting with more and more Canadians looking for a political voice. And I'm bringing them home to our party, the NDP. New Democrats owe it to Canadians to form government. That's the only way we can make the progress that's needed on climate change, inequality, and reconciliation. That's why I'm running. We're bringing new members, new voters, new volunteers into our movement. We're organizing to win in 2019 so that we can finally have the social democratic government that Canada deserves.
Canada is thirsty, our party is thirsty for new leadership, for a new direction, to bring people together, to build an inclusive Canada where everyone can realize his dreams. And that's why, my friends, I am proud to be a candidate for leader of the NDP in Canada.
Like so many, my parents immigrated to Canada to build a better life. That meant I had the incredible honor of growing up in great communities across Canada. I was born in Scarborough, Ontario. Shout out to Scarborough and Toronto. And I was raised in both St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador, as well as the vibrant working class city of Windsor, Ontario. As a child, my mother taught me we are all connected. That when one of us is suffering, all are suffering. We are all suffering. She taught me that if we lift up people around us, we all rise together. This principle is what drives me to fight against inequality, to build a more just society. To do this, we must tackle 4 major issues. Inequality, especially income inequality, pay inequity, and housing affordability. Climate change, absolutely. Climate change, reconciliation, and electoral reform. These are issues important. And not just any electoral reform, proportional representation with mixed membership. Mes parents ont grandi dans un pays qui ne...
My parents grew up in a country that didn't respect minority rights. I've seen the impact of this experience in their lives. They learned to be ashamed of speaking their language, but they were proud nevertheless. And I learned from them that there's a link between language and culture. I've discovered that Francophones in Canada, in particular Quebecers, had to face the same pressures in protecting their language and their identity. That hurt me to think that my parents' experience could have happened in our own country. That was when I decided to learn French as a gesture of solidarity with Francophones across Canada and with the people of Quebec.
I've shared a lot of stories with New Democrats around the country, but one story I haven't shared is something that my family and I experienced. While I was in university, my father became very ill. Both my parents were unable to work, and my dad needed support. As a family, we had to figure out how to pay the bills, put food on the table, find the money for our university tuitions, and keep a roof over our heads. As the oldest of 3 siblings, I felt a responsibility to step up and provide support. So in my 20s, I became the sole income earner for my family. I took on 3 retail jobs at once, selling jeans, shoes, and clothing. I also took in my youngest sibling, my brother Caron. I became his surrogate parent. I made his meals, bought his clothes, sent him to school, and even attended parent-teacher meetings. We continued this way until my father was thankfully back on his feet many years later. We were lucky to find our way out of this precarious situation, but many people don't. Many people have faced far more difficult struggles and continue to face those struggles today. I just caught a little glimpse of the pressure they feel. The weight of living paycheck to paycheck, knowing the consequences of falling short, letting your family down, and losing the basics like shelter, food, and education. That's why when Justin Trudeau tells people to just get used to insecure employment, it offends me. Maybe if you look at employment as a hobby, you can just get used to unstable work. But if your work means the difference between putting food on the table or a roof over the head of your family, then job insecurity is unacceptable. Yes. I've seen the immense burden and stress precarious employment puts on families in my riding and across Canada. That's why the first 2 policies I introduced in this leadership race were my Better Work agenda and my income security agenda. They tackle inequality by protecting workers from being exploited under insecure employment, and they ensure that we have basic income guarantees to support those who are most vulnerable in our society. Yeah. So growing up with brown skin, long hair, and a funny-sounding name meant I faced some challenges growing up. I've been stopped by the police for no other reason than the color of my skin. That experience continued even as a law student and as a lawyer. It makes you feel like you don't belong. It makes you feel like there's something wrong with you for just being you. And that's why I built on the incredible work of activists across Canada and as Deputy Leader of Ontario's NDP, brought forward a motion calling for the end to the discriminatory police practice of carding. Thank you. My motion passed, and now I want to see the day when no one in Canada is ever arbitrarily stopped by the police. As Prime Minister, I will enact a federal ban on racial profiling to end it once and for all. My own experiences with racial injustice and economic difficulty are part of what drives me to work to end all forms of injustice, whether it's social, environmental, or economic. Je l'ai déjà dit, je ne suis pas ici pour vous convaincre.
I'm not here to convince you to accept my turban or my beard. On the other hand, I do want to convince you that I'm someone who shares the same values you do. That I am a social democrat, a progressive, who believes that we have to fight for the rights of everyone, fight against inequality. These are my most deeply held values that have led me to fight for women's rights, for LGBTQ rights. I believe in universal social programs managed by the public sector. I believe strongly in separation of religion and state. I can assure you that my spiritual beliefs are in no way in conflict with my social democrat and progressive values.
Recently, my team and I were, I'm sure you've all seen this or heard about this, were confronted at a campaign event with angry, hateful, and Islamophobic comments. After seeing the video of this event, many people tried to come to my defense by clarifying that I'm Sikh, not Muslim. While I appreciate what they tried to do, my response to Islamophobia has never been, I'm not Muslim. It has always been and will always be that hate is wrong. Because once allowed to grow, hate doesn't pick and choose. Hate is like a fire. Once we say it's okay to hate someone based on their religion, we're opening up the door to hate someone based on their race, their gender, their sexuality, and more. That's why it's so important that we stand united against all forms of hate. And that's why we've been championing a politics of love to fight the growing politics of hate, a politics of courage to fight the politics of fear. This leadership race is about who will get us ready for 2019. Our team has already started by recruiting 47,000 new members. Thousands of members in Liberal-held ridings laying the ground to take on Trudeau. Here, in the Greater Toronto and Hamilton area, 50 of 59 seats are held by Liberals. This is where our team recruited 25,000 new Democrats, making our path to victory clear. Now just think about what we've been able to do in just a few short months. Now imagine what we can build together in 2 years. Imaginez ce qu'on pourrait faire de plus ensemble.
What more we can do in the next 2 years together.
It literally means rising spirits. It means hope in the face of adversity. It means not backing down even when it looks hard, even when it looks impossible, because it's not. C'est ce que Jacques et Tom ont montré au Québec.
This is what Jack and Tom showed in Quebec. They made a breakthrough despite everyone saying they couldn't. And now Caron is continuing by ensuring that the Quebec caucus is heard in this race towards the leadership.
Proved it when they told us we couldn't win in the suburbs, and we did. We proved it, all of us. We proved it together in Alberta and in British Columbia when we were told we'd never win government, but Rachel Notley and John Horgan proved them that we did and we can. We've also been told that the NDP will never form federal government. But together, we will, my friends. We will. Friends, New Democrats, I invite you all to join me in a campaign to win in 2019. It takes an act of love to realize that we're all in this together, and an act of courage to demand better, to dream bigger, and to fight for a more just and inclusive world. Thank you, my friends. Thank you.
Okay, that's the fourth and last candidate making his pitch to NDP leaders here in Hamilton, Ontario at the 2017 NDP Leadership Showcase. I was expecting drums to come on the stage, so we'll keep that shot up. Because if he's the only guy providing live music, we should take it, for goodness sakes. Kathleen, anything? There you go, they're coming.
Cue drums, cue whistles.
Now it'll be impossible to hear us. So a couple things, I guess, interesting there. Jagmeet Singh, he spent a long time talking about his own personal story. And that's, obviously because people maybe don't know him very well, want to know more about him. And he has had these encounters with, been attacked for the way he looks by one woman in particular on a video that went viral, but also questioned by other people about whether he could garner support in all parts of the country.
But it's amazing because he used his own personal narrative about having to hold down 3 jobs to support his family while his father was sick. But then he pivoted to the fact, and that is why it fundamentally offends him, while people in the Trudeau government, it was actually referencing Morneau, although he referenced Trudeau in the speech, says we have to get used to insecure employment. So he's like, that's why I'm working against this. That's why. And the other theme I would just pick up is that, well, Charlie Angus really picked up the Jack Layton, you got my back theme. It's interesting to see how Singh picks up the don't let them tell you it can't be done theme.
And the love and courage thing, too, is very Jack Layton.
Yeah.
What has he brought to the race? I mean, obviously he has talked about his love of fashion. That's actually how he first came on my radar, because I saw him in all these fashion magazines, and he's talked about it as being sort of his armor against racism and discrimination. But what do you think, as someone who is not an MP, a federally elected MP, he brings into this conversation that maybe wasn't there before?
Yeah, a few things. Certainly he brings, the dynamism and what we would call it from a campaign strategist point of view, the royal jelly. He's got great retail. He's very magnetic personality. I met him first, actually, in the 2011 federal campaign when he was running for us. He lost that election and went on to run again in the Ontario provincial campaign and then won there. So, but he's bringing a youth aspect. He's bringing, a lot more diversity. You have to remember, in the riding that he won had never previously been won by a New Democrat before. So he's in the suburbs of the GTA, and he's really bringing a lot more diversity into the campaign and different regions.
And he does, and it's very hard to hear us probably and enjoy the drums, but we're going to do our best here. He also has a lot of endorsements, and he has a lot of endorsements spread right across the country. He has, for caucus members anyway, he seems to be just as appealing in British Columbia as he is in Ontario. Places where the culture would be more diverse anyway in large cosmopolitan cities. So obviously there's that appeal. But again, I listened without my translation in to sort of measure his French. It's okay. It's okay. But I don't know if he goes into Quebec, if there's already a perception that there might be some problems, that he has the language skills that would be needed to overcome all that. Maybe it doesn't matter, but if people think the NDP's base is in Quebec, that's problematic.
So what's interesting is when you talk to the campaigns, they all readily admit that Jagmeet actually she may have developed the most members and fundraising from Quebec.
Oh, really?
But potentially, maybe language isn't the issue, or being a francophone or being from Quebec may not be the issue. You know, numbers around characterizing around 1,500 new memberships out of Quebec, which is significant because I mentioned earlier on the show, Quebec doesn't have a provincial party, a new Democratic provincial party. So these are all new federal memberships. And the money he raised in that one quarter, that second quarter, did actually eclipse all the other three candidates in terms of the money. And certainly I know, speaking to the provincial secretaries in the various regions across the country, they're happy with these numbers because, of course, that means more fundraising, more prospects all across the country.
And he does have big backers. We saw in one of the shots there, Brad Leving, who is, of course, a power panelist on Power and Politics, but also was central to the Layton campaign and played a role in the Mulcair campaign, too. So to have sort of the establishment people behind him, as well as many other people provincially, I imagine.
Yeah, and I think actually what was surprising for me was the rollout really of the BC. It's so dominant. He so dominates in terms of the BC MLAs there, and having just elected that government there to see how strongly they backed Jagmeet was really impressive. But you're right, he has representation from across the whole province, and now, most importantly, has the highest number in caucus, the federal caucus.
Right, and again, there's 124,000 members or so, a little more than that, but not everyone has released how many members they've signed up. It's really only Jagmeet that's done that. So we say that with that caveat that he's saying it. Yeah. And at some point we will know. We will have a better sense.
And they're the only campaign that's been really running ads. He's been known for certainly his viral videos, which were news clips, but he also ran 2 to 3 actual ads for the campaign, some of which have garnered a lot of attention. There was the Wok Cuisine ad, which was early on in the campaign to appeal to Quebecers. Then more recently, there was this great little video
with a little girl.
My friend, the little girl, Taya, who was appealing as a campaign fundraiser moment. So he's running ads. He's also running ads in ethnic media, and in fact has had radio ads on Punjabi radio, running in places like Red FM, which is a very popular radio station in the Vancouver area, known speaking to the Punjabi crowd.
Okay, so that's the final pitch from all 3 leadership contenders. Now things get going, and I just want to remind viewers about how that's going to unfold, and Kathleen and I will sort of wrap up our time here. This is what happens in terms of the vote, because it's happening a little bit differently, and voting does start tomorrow. That's why this was the final pitch. Here's how things will shake down over the next couple of weeks. Party members will receive a ballot with all 4 candidates' names on it in alphabetical order. They will then rank them in order of preference and can vote either by mail or online. The polls for the first ballot open on Monday and won't close till October 1st. If one candidate receives 50% plus 1 of the vote, they'll have a winner. If not, the process repeats itself until someone crosses the 50% threshold. With each passing round, the last place candidate gets wiped from the ballot. In other words, we could find out the winner as early as October 1st after the first ballot, but we'll definitely know who will lead the party moving forward no later than October 15th.
Yeah.
So a leadership race that is a little bit drawn out, or maybe builds momentum and drama. We'll have to see how things unfold next Sunday when we get those first rounds of results. Kathleen, we'll just end on a note about, you've been around a while and a couple of leaders now. How important is this, do you think, for this party to get this right, or to decide what they're going to be going forward, I guess?
I think if you talk to members from coast to coast to coast, if they had a choice, they would still choose Jack Layton.
Yes.
Ultimately.
That's sort of the problem, isn't it?
But sadly, he's no longer available to us. So choosing the next leader is crucial. Some would characterize the choice of last leader in Thomas Mulcair as not the right one. We chose an outsider, some would say, and the result happened as it did. I think going forward, we need someone who's going to motivate the party, be chief fundraiser, be chief inspirational voice. We need the product, as I say, we need good performance, and we need to be able to make the pitch to Canadians. And it's crucial because without a strong leader who can voice the needs of Canadians and actually create a social democratic government in this country, and hopefully actually create the first new democratic federal government.
Well, and also I would argue, although NDPers may not want to think this, but to make sure that the party doesn't fade away.
Yeah, and it's a distinct possibility.
It is. Yeah.
I mean, we contracted significantly in the 2015 election. As I say, we lost 60 seats. If we lose any more, we just, hit that threshold of 44, but we would be going backwards in time. And that's something that, I certainly don't want to see, and I know lots of New Democrats don't want to see.
Okay, so let's just have one more look here at who the final four contenders are. Remember, this is a rare year for Canadian politics because the Conservative Party also had a leadership race, and they now have a new leader, the NDP, now on the verge of choosing a new leader between those four, 3 federal MPs and 1 Ontario provincial MPP. That was their final pitch to NDP members. That was their final pitch to Canadians in some ways, and the voting gets underway tomorrow. The first chance for a winner, October 1st of Sunday. My thanks to Kathleen Monk, Earnscliffe strategist, longtime NDP strategist, many other titles. Thank you for being my buddy all day.
It's
you were
great.
wonderful to have you here. Thank you all for watching. There'll be lots more coverage of this on CBC News Network, The National, and on Power and Politics tomorrow. I'm Rosemary Barton. Thanks for watching. I'll throw it back to Toronto and Michael Serapio. Michael.
Rosie, thank you for that, and thank you for the last couple of hours. And to everyone else, hello, you're watching CBC News Network. I am Michael Serapio. Time now for a look at this hour's top stories. Here are your headlines.